Good afternoon. Hope everyone's doing well. My name is Kyle Learman. I run the Champions of Change program for the White House Office of Public Engagement. First off, welcome to all of you. We're really excited to have you here today for our Educators Champions of Change event. And with that, I will welcome our Educators Champions of Change. There you go. So just a couple quick notes before we get started. So for all of you who are here today and watching online, it's streaming on whitehouse.gov/live, and this event will also turn into a video that's live on the White House. So when you get home, you can post it on Facebook, tweet about it, send it out to friends and colleagues. And if you are tweeting today, you can use hashtag WHChamps to tweet about the event. I know a couple of our champions were tweeting before they got here, and the Director of Public Engagement, John Carson, who's at John Carson 44, loves tweeting about our champions. So I know he's really excited about that as well. So to kick us off today, we have a really special guest and someone who is the President's main education advisor. He is Special Assistant to the President for Education Policy at the Domestic Policy Council, Roberto Rodriguez.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Bienvenidos. Buenas tardes. We're honored to have everyone here today, and on behalf of the entire White House and President Barack Obama, I welcome you to our White House today for the President's Advisory Commission on Educational Excellence for Hispanics, Champions of Change event. We're really proud to have worked with the President's Advisory Commission to honor today outstanding educators that are serving our Latino community. This advisory commission, I want to just take a moment to speak to its importance. It's an important commission of advisors that works with our administration, with our Secretary of Education, Arne Duncan, and with our president to really help guide our education agenda and our policies moving forward. We're really thrilled to have the opportunity today to really recognize some of the champions behind that agenda, folks that are really leading the charge in their local communities to strengthen educational opportunity and to improve outcomes for our Latino community. I want to specifically acknowledge for a moment several of our commissioners who have really played a pivotal role in making today's event possible. And that's in particular Dr. Dan Cardinale and Dr. Patricia Candara here in the front row, if they could just stand to be acknowledged. And Patricia and Dan have helped co-chair and move forward this event. You'll hear from them in a moment. I want to also acknowledge a number of our other commissioners, Lily Eccleston, Monica Martinez, Kent Paredes Scribner, and others on our commission who've lent enormous amount of time and energy to this effort today and to recognizing these champions. I also want to recognize and thank my colleagues and friends at the White House Initiative at Education who staff this important commission. In particular, we have Marco Davis and Gabriel Sandoval. If you guys could stand, please. And finally, we want to thank, and I'll get to this in a moment, but we want to thank all of our champs and their families who have the opportunity to join us here today. Let me begin by just recognizing that the President really values education and strengthening our education system as a key mechanism in our broader effort here at the White House to recover from the recession. We really believe, as the President has said time and time again, that we need to create an America built to last. We really need an American economy that restores economic security for the middle class, where hard work and responsibility is rewarded, and where everyone who wants a good job can find one. And to build this new economy, this really begins with why we're all gathered here today. It begins by providing every child an education that will enable them to succeed in an economy that today is powered by knowledge and by innovation. And this is why, shortly after taking office, the president set for us a goal of having the highest proportion of college graduates in the world by 2020. This is something that our Secretary of Education often calls our North Star. It's what leads all of our administration's efforts forward around education. It's why he also committed to a broader goal that we ensure that every child has access to a complete and competitive education, really from the day they're born all the way through a career. And so fulfilling this promise really demands that we put our education system front and center as a national priority and really do more to strengthen opportunities for learning and unlock those opportunities in classrooms around our country. It requires that we foster a race to the top across America's schools and implement higher standards, higher expectations for all students, but also for our policymakers, for our school leaders, and for all of our adults that work with our young people. It means we have to undertake new efforts to keep America's teachers in their classrooms and advance reforms to make sure that they're supported and that we do more to really transform the teaching profession. We know that from this economic recession and the challenges that the economy has posed, that our education sector has been particularly challenged. We've lost over 300,000 education jobs since the end of this recession. And so, in part, this is why the president has called for new investments to really shore up our teacher jobs and make sure that we're keeping our educators on the jobs and in the classroom. We also know we have to take on this ambitious work of closing the achievement gap and of beginning to turn around some of our low-performing schools. And again, we know this achievement gap is an important challenge to really overcome because we need to do more to foster individual opportunity for each and every one of our young people. But we also know that closing that achievement gap is an economic necessity, that our country's fundamental competitiveness moving forward depends on doing more to close that achievement gap and to prepare each and every one of our young people for college and for successful careers. And this is why we're also doing more to really engage the country in the charge that we have, the grand contest that we face globally, which is a contest to win the future, to really provide children with an opportunity to thrive and to succeed in the global marketplace. That's a contest, again, that's important for the individual well-being of each and every one of our young people, but it's a contest that America's future depends on. And it's a contest that really begins in our classrooms around the country. So we also are here to acknowledge the imperative of education and opportunity for our Latino community. You know, we know today that over 1 in every 5 children in our schools, in our public education system, is a Latino or Latina child. We're the youngest population right now in the country, and one of the fastest growing in our schools. We also know that Latinos, and there's some new data that has just come out on this, that Latinos are a growing share of the labor force and will be really critical to driving our country's economy forward in the coming years. All of that really demands that we refocus and redouble our efforts at supporting our Latino students in our schools, at making sure that they have every opportunity to engage in their learning, to unlock their full potential, to reach high standards, meet high standards, to graduate from high school, and not only to graduate, but to continue on to post-secondary education, to college, or to successful careers. It's an imperative not just for the Latino community. Our collective well-being as a country requires that we do more to meet this charge in our Latino communities and our neighborhoods around the country. And that's in part why we're gathered here today. So this really brings me to today's recognition. Today's recognition is about outstanding teachers who have unlocked the potential of their students, who teach with creativity, with passion, who care from their heart and their soul, and invest countless hours of time and energy in their students and their families, who really have their eyes set on the success of their students, each and every one of those students in their classrooms, and who really are guides, are mentors for those students to really help them set goals, reach those educational milestones, and move forward. These are teachers that we hope we can learn from today, and that we can take those lessons forward and really hold those up as a testament to what's possible in our classrooms, what's possible in our school districts, and for our Latino students around the country. This effort also feeds into a broader effort and a broader call that the President has made and that the Secretary has made to transform our teaching profession so that we're doing better across the board at preparing, at developing, at supporting, at advancing our teachers across the country. This is one of the most important professions we have as a nation. And we believe that we have to have an all-hands-on-deck approach to do more, to support our teachers, and to transform their opportunities to be successful. So our administration earlier this year unveiled a new project called the Respect Project that the President has called for an additional $5 billion investment behind to really transform the teaching profession, to do more to raise the bar on quality across the board, to do more to expect more from our teachers, but also to support them in their work as they drive forward and improve their practice and refine their practice, to do more to make sure that we break down the isolation that too many of our teachers face so that they have opportunities to collaborate, to work together, to use data, to diagnose problems and issues, and to be able to respond to those. All with the notion in mind that we need to enable our teachers today more than ever before to really help all of our students prepare for college and for successful careers. So we hope that this effort, the effort by our commission, and today's recognition really is the a launching point for a new national conversation about how we do more to ensure that we're supporting and transforming the teaching profession, in particular for our Latino teachers and for our teachers of Latino students. A secondary goal there that is just as important is recruiting more Latinos and Latinas into the teaching profession. We are only about 12% of the total teaching profession, and yet we have an overwhelming share in one of the fastest growing populations in our nation's schools. That demands that we do more to unlock this profession and provide new pathways into this profession for our Latino and Latina graduates and for our Latino community. So those are some of the goals that we want to explore as an administration, some of the conversations that we want to foster here with our champions of change today. So now I have the distinct honor and pleasure of introducing today's champions of change. And I'll ask them all to stand as they're introduced. I think actually we'll have them come on up here to the stage. As you're introduced, why don't you come on up? We're going to have an opportunity for you to meet each of our champions. And then from there, we're going to have an opportunity to have a more in-depth conversation, discussion with them about their success in their classrooms, what are the keys to how they've really unlocked potential for their students, and hear their recommendations for how our country can move forward to attract more Latinos into the profession and to support and transform the profession so that ultimately it supports the success of our Latino students. So let's begin with Vanessa Lugo. Vanessa. Welcome. Vanessa is a Teach for America alumna who currently leads the early childhood, kindergarten, and first grade team at her school Cole Arts and Sciences Academy in Denver Public Schools. And currently, she's expanding into a new role at her school where she'll facilitate professional development for teachers around culturally responsive practices. She spent her past 2 summers working as a staff member at TFA, helping to train new core members around issues of diversity and inclusiveness. Our next champion of change is Selena Marie Alonso. Selena. Selena is an English teacher at Maryvale High School in Phoenix, Arizona. She was named her district's 2009 Teacher of the Year, and she served in the English department chair at her high school. Ms. Alonso benefited from Arizona State University's Hispanic Mother-Daughter program, and after earning her teaching degree, she returned to the community where she grew up. Our next champion is Octavio Alvarez. Octavio. Octavio has been teaching at Brawley Union High School in Los Angeles, California for 8 years. His duties include teaching traditional and bilingual mathematics classes. In 2012, the California Association of Bilingual Education recognized Mr. Alvarez as an outstanding teacher of mathematics. He is credited by his district administrators as single-handedly turning around the English learner math program at his high school. Our next champion of change is Jesus Arrizon. Jesus. Jesus hails from a farm worker family of 14 that emigrated from Mexico in 1976. Jesus' father, who worked in the lettuce fields for more than 30 years, imparted the importance of education as a means to fulfilling the American dream for all of his children. After a successful career in engineering, Mr. Arrizon decided to pursue the teaching profession. He's worked as an educator at Gadsden Elementary School District and at Arizona Western College in San Luis, Arizona for the last 11 years. Our next champion of change is Raul Garcia. Raul has taught writing and humanities at the Boston Arts Academy in Boston, Massachusetts for the past 12 years. Mr. Garcia received support and mentorship from the Rockefeller Brothers Fund while at the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor. And after completing his master's degree at Harvard University's Graduate School of Education, he's committed to teaching in the urban public school system of Boston, Massachusetts. Our next champion is Ben Hernandez. Ben serves the students of Houston, Texas, and has served there for more than 14 years. He's taught at multiple grade levels throughout his career, and his work as a 5th grade math teacher has contributed to his school, the Lantrip Elementary School, as receiving a National Blue Ribbon Award for dramatic growth in math achievement. This past spring, he was selected as part of the inaugural Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation Teacher Advisory Committee. Our next champion of change is Guadalupe Mesa. Guadalupe is a Spanish teacher at South Mountain High School in Phoenix, Arizona. Ms. Mesa received the Esperanza Award for Chicanos por la Causa for her work both inside and outside the classroom. Ms. Mesa plays a pivotal role with her students to foster a strong sense of self and a connection to her community. She sponsors several clubs and activities, including the Mecha and Lulac Club at her high school. Our next champion is Armando Orduña. Armando has dedicated the last 15 years to the education of students in Houston, Texas. He's a native of Houston. He currently teaches Spanish and science at the high school level. He's involved in a project where he trains high school students for careers in education through the city's only teacher preparation magnet program. Our next champion of change is Silvia Padilla. Silvia has been a bilingual teacher for the past 20 years. She currently teaches 4th grade in a 2-way bilingual bilingual immersion program at Patrick Henry K-8 School in the Long Beach Unified School District. She's been awarded the Los Angeles County Teacher of the Year and the California Association of Bilingual Education Teacher of the Year for her outstanding work in instruction and implementation of state standards in English and in Spanish. And our final champion of change today is Silvia Rodriguez McDonald. Silvia has taught at the elementary school level in Montgomery County, Maryland since 2005 as an English as a second language teacher. She's a first-generation Cuban Spaniard American who graduated from a high school in Montgomery County, Maryland, and desired to stay in her community and teach students who had similar backgrounds as her own. Join me in giving each of our champions of change a big round of applause. So at this point in time, I'm going to go ahead and ask our first, we're going to transition into our first panel for our Champions of Change. Oh, I'm sorry, we'd like to do a picture first. We'll go ahead and, that's important. Yeah, I'll jump in.
Come on, yeah. Where's Monica?
So we're going to go ahead and transition into our first panel here to learn really more about our champions, each of their stories, and how they've really achieved success for their students. And before I do that, I want to just briefly introduce Dan Cardinale and Patricia Gandara, who really have been the driving force and really the beacons behind this great event. Let me begin with Dan. Dan Cardinale is president of Communities in Schools, which is an organization that's focused on dropout prevention. Prior to his role as president, Dan served as executive vice president of field operations there at CIS. And from 1996 to 1999, he served as both acting director of the Partners Reach Out advocacy program and as assistant director of the leadership and training at Partners of America. Cardinale currently serves as a trustee for America's Promise, the vice chair of the National Human Services Assembly, and as a member of the board of directors for Child Trends and the Harwood Institute's Public Innovators Summit. And let me also have an opportunity to introduce Dr. Patricia Gandara, who's a professor of education at the Graduate School of Education and Information Studies at the University of California, Los Angeles. Gandara is also co-director of the Civil Rights Project based at the University of California, Los Angeles. From 2000 to 2009, she was the associate director of the University of California's Linguistic Minority Research Institute. Prior to this, Dr. Gandara served as commissioner for post-secondary education for the state of California. She's been a bilingual school psychologist, a social scientist with the RAND Corporation, and director of education research at the California Legislature State Assembly. And I'm just honored to have the opportunity to share the stage today with Dr. Gandara and with Mr. Cardinale. They're both great leaders in Latino education, and we're thrilled to have their perspectives and have the opportunity to have them really moderate today's conversation. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dan.
Thank you, Roberto. And I just want to make sure we thank you for your extraordinary leadership. I've known you for many years. Roberto has a remarkable quality of no matter how extraordinarily busy he is, when he focuses in with you, he blocks out everything else, and it's a remarkable quality that has made him extremely effective, yes. And he's been a teacher, so we say that. So my job today is actually to disappear and to highlight the extraordinary people up here on the stage. So we're going to have fun. This is all about celebration. And the first thing I just want to say is that there are times in life when your life changes, when you go from being an extraordinary person, quietly doing your thing because you love it, to all of a sudden being picked out and being asked to be a leader. that's what actually today is. So we're going to hear from folks who are no longer just citizens who are doing extraordinary things, but they are now leaders, hopefully inspiring other citizens to do incredible things. So to kick that off, what we'd like to do is hear a little bit about their own story, who they are, what they've accomplished, what they think about actually matters. So we're going to start off with Vanessa, and I'm going to ask each one of them just to take 2 or 3 minutes and talk a little bit about how you got involved in teaching and kind of what gives you your mojo.
Great, thank you, Dan. So my story begins in California. My parents are actually immigrants from Mexico. My dad is from Jalisco, Mexico, and my mom is from Durango, Mexico. And I was born in Santa Barbara, California, so who, California? I grew up in Carpinteria, California, which is south of Santa Barbara. And I got into teaching through Teach for America. And the reason that I joined Teach for America is because when I joined the organization, I knew that I would be teaching students much like myself. And I remember as a kid seeing the frustration in my parents' eyes when they couldn't help me with my homework because they didn't speak any English. So when I began kindergarten, I didn't speak any English at all. So my education, needless to say, was quite a transition. And so being a pre-kindergarten teacher, I've just gotten a whole new perspective because I've gotten to experience a lot of what my teachers experienced with me and what my parents experienced. I've gotten to experience those same things with my family. So I'm very thankful to Teach for America for bringing me into the teaching profession because it opened my eyes to the world in a different perspective. I had seen it from the perspective of a student, and now I get to see it from the perspective of a teacher and provide the support and the love that my students and my families deserve.
Thank you. Octavio, we had the opportunity to chat a little bit beforehand, and you have quite an extraordinary story as well. So what is it, my friend?
My adventure in education started a few years ago when, after a car accident, I stayed a few years in the hospital, and when I opened my eyes, I couldn't move any part of my body. A lot of bones broken inside. The worst thing was that the loss of my son, my 15 years old son. After weeks praying, I asked God for an opportunity to do something for my community because I don't want it to be living just like that. I don't know when, but a few months later, I was enrolled in the community college, studying English as a second language. I finished my education as a second language learner, and I transferred to San Diego State University, where I finished my career as liberal studies and double major in Spanish. I took my CSAT test in math. I passed it, and then I got hired at Bradley Union High School, which is located in Bradley, just like 24 miles away from the border. Then, as a teacher, I understood that I love that career. I love my children. I love my bilingual students. But that's not enough. We have to be prepared. We have to know our subject to make a difference in our students. We have to learn to be their friends. We have to learn to live their problems every single day. What is a plus for me is that we have the same background. We are coming from the same place. Because in my community, as I said, Bradley is close to the border. Most of my students are coming from the same place, from Mexicali, Mexico, where I attended to the school, where I was born. So it's easy for me to understand my students because we have the same background. So that's basically why I am a teacher now.
So coming from the other side of the country, Raul, why did you get involved?
What do you mean? You make it sound like I'm from Hawaii. I came to teaching, I think, very much in a fluke kind of way. I kind of describe myself as a person that went to college like many other young people. Though I had a lot of support, I kind of went undecided. And I remember in a very late night talking in junior year with one of my roommates, who was actually a grad student in our dorm. And he said, you know, I've known you for many months, at least at that point, not a very long time, and you would be an amazing teacher. And I said, what? Okay. And he said, and I think you should fill out this application for a graduate school fellowship. And I said, I don't even know what that is. Is that like a grant? Is that a scholarship? Because I need money now. And he said, no, but it could be. And I was very fortunate. Literally the next day, I filled out an application for the Rockefeller Brothers Fund Teaching Fellowship for Students of Color, which has now become part of the Woodrow Wilson Foundation. I interviewed. The next week, I was in New York interviewing. I won. And then all of a sudden, I was part of a cohort of people of color who were going into teaching. And I said, this is really awesome. I'm going to be a teacher. And they're going to really help me with grad school and pay for loans after. And I thought, to me, this sounded like a wonderful opportunity. I was being supported, and I thought, I always loved school. Why wouldn't I be a teacher? To me, it just kind of fell in my lap in a way, and it was a kind of a beautiful, smooth journey that was just a really, really great blessing for me, because every moment from that application process on became a wonderfully supported journey by my grad school peers, my grad school professors, and then the educators after that I began working with. And just having a fellowship that supported me throughout that journey made me feel like I had this rock that was always there, whether I was in my hometown or not. I just felt like I always had people behind me that I knew were going to support me in becoming a better and a stronger teacher. And that got me to the classroom. I think that the thing that I think about a lot in being in Boston is being a Latino in Boston means that I get the luxury of teaching a very diverse classroom. And I love being in a classroom that is Dominican, Salvadoreño, Mexicano, Puerto Riqueño. It is Cape Verdean, it is African American, it is West Indian. So to me, the beauty of the classroom is about figuring out how I have to work with a US-born Latino, a person who is an ELL still learning the language, someone who is speaking patois at home. I have to figure out the beauty of that American diverse classroom. So to me, I am just enriched by their stories, by the experiences that all the kids come with. So it is my job, I feel like, it is my responsibility every day to figure out how I will help students achieve. So to me, that is the beauty of being a part of the American social fabric, and that is why the classroom, you know, enriches my own life every day.
Thank you. Guadalupe, you and I also had an opportunity a little bit to chat.
Yes.
And you have a fabulous story. Tell us why you got involved in teaching.
Well, my adventure of education started in Nogales, Sonora, Mexico. In Mexico, when I was growing up a few years ago, we don't have like a substitute program over there. If you have no teacher, you are sent home. So I was in 5th and 6th grade, and I always loved school. So they will ask the older kids to take care of the little kids. So I always did, you know, everything that I needed to get done for me to go and be the teacher for the day. So that's how it started. I noticed that, you know, they were paying attention to me, and I can give them, you know, specific instructions, and they will do it. And during recess, they will call me Maestra Mesa, and a 10-year-old, 11-year-old maestra. So it all started. It all started there. Then my parents decided, immigrant worker, my dad, to travel to Phoenix, Arizona. So he took us there, not knowing any English. I went into high school, 8th grade, and then in high school. And I really wanted to, be a teacher, but I didn't know the language. So I'm like, I need to learn English. I need to. So I did. I was an ELL student like Octavio. I graduated from high school, going into college as an ELL student, and then I transferred to university. And then my education continued. I'm doing my master's programs through Southern Oregon University, and it's been an adventure for me. I teach Spanish, and one of the reasons being because I love my culture, I love my language, and it's just great seeing kids wanting to learn my language. I'm learning their language, and they help me all the time. So I help them. I said, if you help me, I help you. So it's always a collaboration that we do in my classroom. I teach native speakers, so that is a plus for me because I was one of them. When I came to the U.S., not knowing the language, trying to get through, but still there was a little place in the big school where I can go and speak my language and keep learning. So I've been blessed being in education. I love being a teacher. It's just great to share my story and tell the kids, you can do it. If I did it, you can do it. And education as a whole, for me, being a Latina, is something that nobody, or anybody is going to take away from me. And it's something that I always share with my students. So education for me is an adventure. It's always something to learn from, or someone to learn from. And it's awesome. Become a teacher.
You can see why my job is so very easy. All I have to do is to ask them. So, Armando, I'd love to hear your story. You come from a city I know and love well and have done incredibly diverse things there.
Yeah, I come from Houston, Texas, born and raised. Come on, people, Houston, Texas. And before I begin, I'd like to say hello to my fifth period that should be watching this right now in my classroom. Hi, guys. I'm sitting here listening to all the inspirational stories, and I'm thinking to myself, how did I get into teaching? How did I get into teaching? And it really, nothing as inspirational as what I've been hearing today. And that wasn't a joke. I liked a lot of discipline when I was much younger, a lot of discipline. When I was in high school, I did very well, or as well as the next kid, or maybe even a little bit better, but I left high school, I did my freshman year of university, and then I dropped out. And I dropped out for a while, like 3 years, no school. Just kind of went around earning a buck, kind of living. And I remember one of the jobs I had a bunch of different types of jobs. I worked in the backs of restaurants and cooking in kitchens, or as a waiter, or as loading up furniture onto trucks. And it was one of those jobs. I was loading up some furniture, well, let me back up. I was supposed to be loading up some furniture on the back of a truck. We were moving it to, somebody had bought a couch, and we were supposed to move it to their house. And as I was loading it up, or I was supposed to be loading up, there were some kids that were doing their homework, little kids, outside on the front lawn. And I don't know how it started, I don't know how it began, but I was, when my boss yelled, where's Armando? Somebody said, he's over on the lawn. And there I was working with those kids, working on their homework, not loading a sofa. Well, flash forward a couple of years later, I'm back in college, back in Houston, and I'm looking for a job. That was like my full-time job, was looking for a job. And so I was on my bicycle, and I was down to my last 20 bucks. I had enough groceries to get me through the end of the week, and I was really tired. It gets really hot in Houston during the summer. So I decided to take some of that money that I had and make a kind of like a stop. I wanted some air conditioning. So there was this museum. I was in the museum district in Houston, and I pulled into the Children's Museum of Houston, and I decided to spend the afternoon there. I bought an admission ticket, and I went in and I played for like 3 hours till they closed. And by the end of the time I was there, I had face paint all over me. I had done the little crafts, and I had a job application and an interview set for the next week. Wow, that was 15 years ago. Every time I found myself kind of drifting off away from school, away from, I guess what you would call a path, a career path, there was somebody that would come around and say, hey, can you help my kid with his homework? Or, hey, you're good with kids, can you babysit for the weekend? Or, hey, and I'm a single guy, you know, in college and asking me to babysit. And can you do story time at the local library or things like that? Before I knew it, somebody came up to me and said, maybe you should try getting paid for this on a regular basis. And I thought, wow, yeah, that sounds so much better than what I've been doing already. So I went into the classroom and started working at, no, let me scratch that. I went into the classroom and I stopped working. I've been playing for the last 15 years. Thank you.
So just a couple of themes that I think are really worth highlighting, and then I'm going to ask a couple of you some questions. I'm going to all of you questions, different questions. But what's fundamental to me are 3 themes. The first is there is this extraordinary ability for these folks to take their own stories, whether it be tragedy or a sense of purpose, and convert it and be other-centered. A good friend of mine talks about turning outward. And then channeling that in a way that is extraordinarily constructive by being a teacher. It's a remarkable quality. The second, I think, is these folks were asked. Somebody went to them and said, you've got talent, and we need you in the classroom. So I think for ourselves, as we think about how to encourage folks, Latinos, to become teachers, part of it is asking, having an expectation that they are leaders and they can be transformative. And then this notion of solidarity, understanding that my story and your story commingle, and we can co-create wonderful things together. Really remarkable in this kind of narrative. So thank you all very, very much. So you all are up here for a number of reasons, not the least of which is because you're extraordinary teachers. So I'm wondering if a couple of you, and I'd love to lead with you, Octavio, because you told me a fabulous story about what makes you an extraordinary teacher. And for some of these folks, it's going to be hard because they're used to not being in the front and being pointed to. But I think a leader is someone who knows what is right. And so what is it that distinguishes you as a teacher?
I won't say that I'm the best teacher, but I try to do my best every single time that I'm teaching. I don't have any problems because when you love your profession, everything will become itself by itself. When you love your profession, you do good things. I like to be with my students in school and sometimes after school, playing a sport, doing something, preparing my students for standardized tests like CASE, which is the exit exam, doing tutorial. For me, it's not difficult being a teacher. I don't see my job as a job. I see my classroom as a shelter for my students and for me, where we share, where we learn, where we have fun, where we play, where we respect each other. I think being like that, I could say, answering the other question that you said, to promote our profession as a teacher, the best way to encourage our community is trying to be a good teacher. Make our community know that what we do it with love, because we love the career. If I'm a good teacher, that's because I like to help my students to succeed. They have a lot of barriers to overcome in this country. The first one is the language. But while they are learning their second language, I will do my job so they can learn to walk the steps, and when they are ready to fly, it will be easy for them to walk that important step. I think for me it's not difficult to succeed with my students, because when I see my students passing their significant tests like CSTs, KC, I feel great. I'm not teaching because of the check. I need it to pay my bills, but the most important thing is my passion for my job.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask one more question. Guadalupe, you're going to get it. And then I'm going to ask each of you to kind of sum up in a sentence, just one sentence. If you can, to the audience, talk about how do we ensure that Latinos across the United States can see teaching as a viable way to transform themselves and their community? Because it's been your story, as you talked about. But I want to ask you a question. So you deal with students right in the border region. So what are the strategies you use to really keep them engaged and excited about learning?
I am very pro in connection and connect everything I can with their stories, because like I said, I was one of them. And first of all, I tell them if they're here in the U.S. and if they're in my room, it's for a reason. My parents, I tell them, they didn't sacrifice a lot to be here. So their parents didn't sacrifice for them not to do anything. So I'm sorry. But the connection and the connectivity that you can share with them and be yourself so they can see themselves in you. That is the most important part, that they can do something and be somebody. It is inevitable, inevitable.
Yes.
Did I say that right? Good job for me. To not deal with them personally. Yes, you are the teacher. You are, the authority in your classroom. But there's times that you just want to go, you're great, you're awesome, your family brought you here for a reason, and you can do it if I did it. That have connection. And always, when I came to the U.S., I didn't see a lot of, pressure on me on learning the English. So maybe I sound like this. But it's now is the time to awake and be you, and don't be ashamed and don't be embarrassed to be who you are and where you came from. Always poner los pies sobre la tierra, be on your feet, and be realistic of everything that you can do. I never imagined that I would be recognized to do what I love to do, or get awards like this. Coming to the White House, I've never been here, to Washington. And by doing what I do, so is just giving them the opportunity to see themselves in you and have that connection with your students all the time. Yes.
Thank you. Very much. So we have literally a minute and a half. So actually, I'm going to start at this end, Armando, with you. So the one thing you want to say that will drive the Latino community to the next level, and particularly around great teachers coming in the classroom.
You know, one of the hallmark characteristics of Latino culture that I think others around the world note right away is the incredible importance and emphasis that we put on family. I think everybody would agree on that. When my students walk in the door, I don't see them as the kids from the neighborhood. I don't see them as even necessarily my students. When they walk in and I look in their eyes, I see my daughter. I see my brothers. I see myself. When I sit down and I talk to a single mother who's wearing herself thin, going gray too early, trying to stretch 50 cents into $1, I see my mother. I think to prepare the next generation, we want to let them know, the next generation of teachers, we want to let them know, we're not preparing you for the next generation of students, we're not preparing you for the next generation of family. The kids that walk into that door, they're your family. They're my family. They're our family. As long as we keep that sense of family in our classrooms, it'll extend out into the world and into our lives and into our business. Is that a minute and a half?
That was great.
Thank
Thank you. Well, Luca, real quick, your thoughts. I think you've summed up in a sense what you said before.
Yeah, and yes, is like Armando said, the family. I tell my students, mi salón es tu salón, my classroom is your classroom, so like mi casa es su casa. So I tell them always, work as together, and that will carry on. Like he said, I truly believe in that as well, and just be there for them.
Fabulous.
Yes.
Ooh, I'm glad I can talk fast. Okay, I've made a list like I tell my students to. I want to say that in our educational communities or in educational sort of institutions where we're attempting to bring in new generations, I think it's critical that we start talking about in our society about Latinos as having many, many advantages and many, many skills, rather than talking about Latinos as we have deficits, that we are behind, that because I know 2 languages that I am inferior, because I learned 2 or 3 languages before kindergarten, that I better let go of everything and learn 1 to be a good person, a good citizen. I don't understand the mentality that we are promoting, that Latinos are disadvantaged. I think of us as a bridge to the world. So when I hear about public policy trying to make us beat people, I think that we should be using Latino students as bridges to the world, because when they can go and be translators and work in China, and they can work in Latin America, or they can learn French easier because they're Romance languages, they should be the people that are working in government. They should be working in schools. They should be shaping the policy, because we are an advantage to this society. We are not a disadvantage. So I think it's time to shift that paradigm, because I'm kind of tired of living in it, and I hope the next generation is too. The other thing that I think of is that I think I want to have responsibility with our own families and our own community to provoke ourselves to. Unfortunately, many of us know that there are and Armando and I were talking about this earlier, very few men in the profession, very few men of color, very few Latino men that stay past 2 or 3 years. And so for me, it's really critical that we're supporting them through grants and scholarship and fellowships, which made me stay longer, and now I'm in my 16th year of education, of teaching. I'm doing that because I was supported. So we have to go to those places early, though, and teach them that if there are 5 of us that are making it from the neighborhood, we shouldn't be telling those 5 that teaching is not an option, that they're only supposed to be businessmen and lawyers or just get a good job. Because teaching is a noble profession, and just because you don't want to go to be a principal doesn't mean that's not noble, because you're shaping more people every day than an administrator, in my opinion. because I get to be with the kids every day. So when I see my kids on the bus, I know I've shaped their lives because they're saying it is because of you that you helped me do this that gave me that opportunity in college. So we are bridges.
Octavio.
Latino population is growing. As we heard before, one of every 5 people is Latino. So we have to promote the teaching career among our community, among our students, because we need teachers, Latino teachers, that can be a role model for our community and strive for the good things that our Latino people can make for this country. We have very smart people in the Latino community, but they need some help. And being a teacher is one of our opportunities to teach those people and help them to become or succeed in their lives.
Thank you. Vanessa, you started us off, and you can bring us home.
So I have 48 children, and I believe that they deserve quality educators who share a similar background as they do. Because going through my pre-K 12 education, I was thinking about it last night, and I had maybe 3 Latino teachers. And that's sad to think about. I graduated in 2006, and I'm sure in 6 years not much has changed. And I believe that my kids deserve quality educators who not only know their content level, but who bring their culture and who bring the richness of their background into the classroom each and every single day. And so for me, this is why I urge Latinos to, and not only just Latinos, but people of color in general, to go into the classrooms, because our kids deserve to see somebody who looks like them at the front of that classroom so that they know that they can achieve anything that they want to achieve, regardless of the barriers that they have faced in their lives. They need to know that what they can achieve is because of and not aside of what they bring to the table. And so for me, when it comes to bringing Latinos into the classroom, I say, our kids need you, and remember to hold our kids to the highest expectations possible, because when you make excuses for our children, the only person that you're hurting is that child who needs your support and your love to succeed.
So first of all, thank you very, very much for not just sharing your stories, but your passions and your struggles, as well as your vision and expectations for the future. It really is, personally, Sir Patricia and I share this, it's been an extraordinary experience in watching you all come forth and learning your stories. So our goal is to share that, and we really appreciate this as a launch. And so we're going to bring up your colleagues now, but I'd ask you one last time to just give these folks an extraordinary round of applause. So while she's coming up, I get to introduce Patricia Gandara, Dr. Gandara, for most folks. I've actually known Patricia for about 4 or 5 years now. And there are some people in the world who can do one thing well. Some people can do a number of things well. Patricia is one of those extraordinary people that whatever she does well. She puts her heart and soul into weaving high standards from an academic and research point of view, from a social justice point of view, and from an enormous humanity. So it's a great pleasure to be able to co-chair the subcommittee with her. And it's really, if the truth be told, her vision that helped actually make this happen. So please welcome Patricia Gandara.
So we have name tags in front. We understand that we're a little behind time here, but I do. What's that?
It's always happens.
Yeah, but we are going to go a little bit over in order to ensure that, that everybody does have the opportunity to speak. How eloquent are these people, right? I mean, how eloquent. So I could sit here all day and listen to them. But we're going to try and do a little bit of a different thing with this panel so that we can move through a few more areas that we haven't had a chance to touch on yet. I think Silvia, this Silvia, and we have bookend Silvias here, and Ben, que está aquí. Each wanted to share just a couple minutes about their particular story, but on this round, we're not going to go through everybody's story. We'll let them build their story in through some other questions. But Silvia, do you want to just give us a little start
Oh,
here?
I would love it, and thank you all. What a great day, and thank you for your stories. I'm inspired. I have $1 in here, and that brings a memory, a childhood memory that gives my parents really the credit for inspiring me to become a teacher and for loving learning and discovery. And my earliest memory is sitting in the living room as a 2-, 3-year-old and listening, believe it or not, to Tchaikovsky's Nutcracker with my father. And my father was a baker, and he would make me sit and make my brothers and sisters sit and say, listen to the tiniest details. There's a castanet coming. Listen for it. Be aware of it. And I would go, what? But I remember hearing it. And he said, when you notice the details, you notice the beauty of art. And that stayed with me forever. Later on in my life, he would do an education celebration after we finished the school. And the reason $1 comes back is because my parents together, my mother and my father, would prepare a meal. My dad was a baker, and he would make an incredible cake. My mom, an incredible cook, would make our favorite meal. What it is, I don't remember. But I remember the sense that this was valid. And after we would all eat, we would slice that cake, and then he would say, education is the most important thing. You never take it for granted. You must take advantage of the opportunities before you. And he would give us each a brand new, crisp bill. Yesterday I went to the Bureau of Engraving, where they do the bills. And that's why I tell you that story. So next time you see it, that's the gift that I was given.
Thank you, Silvia. Celia Rodriguez.
My story starts out very similar probably to many of us, where I was an English language learner as well. And I had a mother who divorced when I was very young, and her way to take care of me and my sister was to become an educator herself. So I had great role modeling in terms of bringing education forward and being a priority in our household. I went to college thinking I was going to be a business person and make a ton of money and do well, and couldn't stand it. So instead, I helped my mother open her real estate business, and through that, I helped educate first-time home buyers, primarily Hispanics in this area. And working with them, it wasn't about just educating the parents so they could buy a house. It was about educating the children so they could learn what was important for them to be able to become successful down the road. Having my own children led me into the interest of how children grow and develop, and I decided to change careers and go into teaching through a partnership program with Johns Hopkins University and Montgomery County Public Schools. And through that, all the supports that they provide, the consulting teachers, the role modeling, tons of education and support behind the program, led me to stay in the teaching career past the 5-year mark where many teachers leave. And I took a position in a part of the county where there was very little diversity. In 4 years' time, we grew from 2% Hispanic to 20% Hispanic. Our ESOL program grew from 8% to 20-something%. It's much larger now. And I found myself needing to educate the teachers in my building and the administration about the ESOL program and what was important to help those students to be successful. And so for me, being a teacher just wasn't enough. I needed to be a leader. And I needed to be a leader in my school and in my county and advocate for the other ESOL teachers in the county so they can have the opportunities and the things they need to be able to help students succeed the best.
Thank you, Celia. And now Ben.
It's funny, I stopped to remind Patricia that I was actually going to say something about my story as well. And I remembered earlier this morning I was called the mouthy one of the group, so and I see why. It's okay. One of the first things I wanted to say was I honestly don't know where this desire to serve, I can't remember back in my upbringing as to what specifically or what particularly gave me this desire to serve others as deeply as I do. I just know that that's what drives me, that's what motivates me, that's what gets me up in the morning, that's what keeps me up at night as well. This deep desire to serve everyone. And so in looking for areas of service, of social service, as to where to work through college, I went on a mission trip to Mexico where we worked in serving an indigenous population in the mountains. And I was juggling in my mind, I was trying to decide between an area or a life of service as a nurse or a life of service as a teacher. And here I was trying to get my feet wet as what is medical service or the medical field. And there it was that I made my decision that I wanted to be a teacher. There, again, getting my feet wet in the medical field. I learned what a catheter was. And I was 18 and I had no idea really what a catheter was. And I learned and I realized I would much rather teach. Right. And, but I knew that I wanted to be in the trenches. I wanted to be in a position that made a difference. And in commenting on that, I also want to make a comment about the title we're given, Champions of Change. The idea of being called a champion is not something that I'm very inclined to like or even say about myself that I'm a champion, but the idea that I'm being recognized or that organizations would recognize us as champions, not for things that we do for ourselves, as most champions, but rather for things that we do for others. That I'm a champion because of my service. That's beautiful. And so that's why I became a teacher and why I also enjoy this title of Champion of Change.
Thank you, Ben. So Ben is mouthy and I'm curious. And I think that's what got me into being a researcher, because I just always have these questions. So that's why I'm going to sort of push this on a little bit and move down to some other questions I have, because this is my one chance to hear from these extraordinary individuals about questions I've had for quite some time. So I want to move next to Selena. Selena, what have been your greatest rewards as a teacher? What would you tell us about that?
That's a really easy question to answer for me, because I am rewarded every day just by listening to the stories of my students, seeing them be successful, watching them grow into individuals who love their community, who want to return to their community and serve and work there, who embrace the challenges and are able to not just surpass them, but to learn how to live in a community where they teach their peers how to conquer those very similar obstacles. And so every day I get to watch, and every day I get to be rewarded as I see my own students working together to achieve the dreams that they have. I tell them, you are the true dreamers, and dreams accomplish wonderful things. And that's a quote from Jaime Escalante. And they, in the beginning, I'm not sure if they believe it. But then, as the year progresses, I get to see them embrace this idea that I am a dreamer and that I will accomplish great things. And then that keeps moving. I feel like it's a constant reward. I have students who move on to college, become successful in college, and then return back to the west side of Phoenix, to the community of Maryvale, and continue to grow that idea and to inspire others, their families, the people around them to believe in the same dream and that they too can accomplish that. So.
Thank you.
Okay, my name is Jesus Arrizon, and I come from also from a border town in a very small town, and I wanted to say something about the students and also the rewards that I get. One of the rewards is that we started a program about 5-6 years ago, and it's about having the students taking the ACT early in the 7th and 8th grade. And my reward is something that I tell everybody. It's just that some of my students, the first cohort is already graduated from high school, and a lot of them told me, teacher, I passed AP Calculus, and most of them did pass with 5s and 4s. But the thing is, some of them are going to MIT, some of them are going to California, Berkeley, New York, I mean, with scholarships, 50, I mean, I never dream of even getting that for me, and my students are doing so. I mean, I'm really amazed, and I'm excited to keep teaching, and sometimes I pray, just give me enough energy, because I teach them, some of my students, I teach them early in the morning for 2 classes, and then I teach them for college classes in the afternoons, and I pray for energy because they have a lot of energy. Thank you.
So I would say that one of the things that we've heard from most of the folks so far, from the first panel as well as this one, is that getting into teaching had a lot to do with the right kinds of supports. I think Dan mentioned being tapped, being called out as somebody who might be a good teacher, and then being provided the support to be able to do this. One of the things that we know is an enormous problem in this country is retaining these good teachers. So we put all of our focus on trying to get folks in the front door, and we're losing most of them through the back door, and we're losing them quickly. So I'm going to challenge each of you to tell me something about, and very quickly, please, because I still have many other questions, but something about what from your own experience would you say is the most effective thing we can do to retain teachers? And I'm actually going to start with Ben this time, because he's one of the people who told me he really wanted to speak on this.
Right, I wanted to speak to this mostly because I am no longer a teacher. I have since very recently moved out of the classroom after 13 years and into professional development. And it was a very difficult decision for me. And so in many ways, that was a challenge I had, whether to stay in the classroom and leave the classroom. And it's a challenge. I don't want to say that I failed because I didn't stay in the classroom. Rather, I look at it differently in that I'm able to spread the success that I've had with students across other teachers, across the many teachers that I coach and work with directly. So in a sense, I feel that my leaving the classroom has spread my success over other students, but I feel also very important that I speak to this issue because there are some very, very obvious things that we can do as my district and as a country and education to retain effective teachers. And the very first thing I wanted to say was, in education, we together, not just us up here, not just the effective teachers, but together, we need to start redefining what success means in education, what success means for an educator, for a teacher. Oftentimes, teachers feel that success for them is, to teach for a little while, show some years of effectiveness, and then move on to be an instructional coordinator or a principal or education leader off the campus or out of the classroom. And unfortunately, we have kind of followed the same model as business community, where moving up the career ladder is what defines success. However, in education, I really feel strongly that success, I'm talking quickly, success needs to be defined as, I stayed in the classroom 30 years. I served my community for 35 years. I was a beacon in my school. I was a beacon to children, to their parents, to grandparents in my community. And I think that's what should define success in education. 1, 2, we need to establish career pathways that allow teachers to feel used beyond their classroom, to feel useful, I should say, beyond their classroom, to be utilized beyond the classroom. And that's something my district is doing very well right now. We're going through these ideas of what are different career pathways. And then finally, of course, the elephant in the room that no one wants to discuss, restructuring compensation. Restructuring compensation to where we compete with the private sector. I know Cornel West once wrote in Democracy Now! How the public sector loses brilliant minds to the private sector. And we are in the public sector, we are starving for these brilliant minds that have been courted by private companies because of nothing else in the compensation packages that they can offer that we do not. And again, that's the elephant in the room that we need to address very directly.
And if anybody would like to see a little bit more about the elephant in the room, there's a wonderful videotape called The American Teacher that speaks specifically to this, and you could all get a hold of it. I think you can even see it online for free. Okay, I'm going to ask the rest of the panel. I do want to go through this, yeah, but quickly as possible. Sylvia?
Collaboration among teachers. Teachers tend to think that they have to take responsibility for their classroom, for their students all on their own, because they're accountable for them. That doesn't always work, because by ourselves we cannot do it, but by working together, planning together, not just with your grade level, but across grade levels. The experience that I have had personally is that the students that we have in our school are all of our students. When a student fails, we work together, and he said, I'll help you, let's figure this out. We try to solve the problems together. So for me, collaboration, do not isolate yourself.
Thank you.
I think the number one thing that just sticks out in my mind about teacher retention is the idea that we need to listen to the teachers. Nobody knows room 103 at Maryville High School more than I do. No one else has listened to the needs that my students are communicating to me that they have. They communicate to me what they need. I adjust. I develop my lessons and to suit their needs. So I know what's happening in my classroom. Teachers know what's going on in their classroom, and when they're not listened to, they grow frustrated, they grow disenchanted, and we can't retain them. But when teachers are given the opportunity to be teacher leaders, when they're given the opportunity to speak on the behalf of their students, and they're listened to, and they're the experts, and when their expertise is taken into consideration, it just gives an opportunity for us to do what we do. And I just really think that we don't have a lot of practices that are put in place right now where teachers are really being asked and then listened to see what they need in the classroom.
Thank you so much. Selena?
Some things I think that would really help with retaining teachers is providing them with mentors that will assist them to grow and for teachers to become lifetime learners. They need to be experts in what they're teaching, but they also need to be willing to collaborate and be part of a shared leadership team in their school and bring forward open their mind and bring forward changes that will help them to continue to grow and support each other. Collaboration is so important in education, and as teachers, as we learn to collaborate and as we learn that we are teacher leaders, even if we don't want to be called a leader, we are models for our students, and we're building the future leaders of today and tomorrow. And by using those skills that we have, and some of us don't recognize that we truly do have them, it's bringing everyone forward, the teacher, the administrator, and the students. So I think collaboration, mentoring, and support is critical for teachers to be retained in education.
Thank you. Jesus, do you want to add?
Just a little. Okay, I just wanted to say, because I talked to a mentor teacher in my school, and I talked to my teachers in mathematics, and in all departments, it's the same thing. We know the best strategies already, and we need to use them in the classroom. As long as we know that we can monitor that the teachers are using the best practices, that's fine. We have a program. Sometimes we are introduced to a program. 2 years later, change the program again, and everybody is not used to that. You know, the programs don't work from one year to another. Let's use the best practice. Always use the best practices, and let's stick with one program. You know that we know it's going to work, but don't just change every year. You know, I think that would help the teachers.
Sounds like you're echoing Selena a bit too, right? And listen to those of us who are the experts in the field, right? Are we okay on time? Okay. So I think everybody here in the room is curious about how you would explain your own success as a teacher. I mean, you folks have been vetted and vetted and vetted, and you have all received all kinds of awards, and there's just a great consensus. You are wonderful teachers. What could you tell us has been responsible for your ability to be such a successful teacher?
I'll start with this, surprisingly enough. So it's an epiphany that I had in the 5th grade classroom. I taught kinder for 5 years, and I moved into the 5th grade classroom. And this grand epiphany I had that I had this student, and I wish I could say her name. She came to me in 5th grade, and I was her math teacher, and she had not demonstrated any success on any assessment of any kind, not just state assessments, but on any assessment, any math assessment in her entire elementary career. She struggled in math, and her mom would come in and tell me she just can't do math, and she would tell me I just can't do math. And so when she would do poorly on an assessment or poorly during class, it wasn't any surprise. She didn't feel bad. It's just something she was used to. And so what I learned was, I worked with her to where she experienced just the tiniest bit of growth. She had this little glimmer of success, of ability that she had not seen before. And so she was eager. She thought, I can do that. I almost passed. Let me work a little more. I showed her, look how close you were. Look how close you were. Look how close we got you. And she was my special student. She was a student that, during some of the assessments, I would say, hey, go try that again. My classroom assessments, not state assessments, but go work on that one again. She was a student that I would pull and I would push. And again, the little glimmer of success led to desiring a little more success. And then, look, you passed this time. You passed this week. And so what would she do? She would want to work a little harder. She saw that her work translated into success, into learning, into achievement. I learned the epiphany that I had is that children are motivated by success. Very much like adults, we're also motivated by success. And it's something I laugh that the video game companies have figured this out a long time ago, when they can get a child to sit there in front of a TV doing this for hours on end by allowing them to feel just a little bit of success at every stage, every level. They do this, the most boring thing you could possibly do, sit there and just move your thumbs. And so in the same sense, I learned that the children are motivated by success. And me allowing children to experience just a little bit, and moving on, and moving them on, and moving them on. By the time she left my 5th grade classroom, she had passed for the very first time a math assessment, a state math assessment in 5th grade. For the very first time.
Thank you.
Sure. I measure, again, my dad used to say, listen for the details, look for those details. And for me, is looking and finding what it is that child needs. And really looking at what they bring in with them instead of what they don't have. So the moment that child goes, I know I got it. That's my measure of success, that sound. You know that sound, don't you? That's for me, is success.
Thank you. Let's go.
I think I have had different classes, different levels. And one time I had a student, and this student was in a low class. I guess it was a remedial class in mathematics, and he was labeled below performance, below level. And but my students know that I teach in the afternoons. Every so often they come to my door and teacher. And they see I teach to adults too, and because I teach in Arizona Western College also in the afternoons. But I also have my students from like school, Southwest Junior High, teaching them 2 classes. And one of my students came to me, and he was in a remedial class, and he said, teacher, can I also be in the class, in the afternoon classes? I said, you can be in that class, but you need to work really hard. And he said, can I have a book? Take it home. So I gave him a book. He took it home. And then later he told me, teacher, I understand the book. And he was in a remedial class. And I said, okay, great. I'll give you an application to enter the college, and I'll get you, you have to pass a test, a pre-test, and see if you qualify to be in the class. And, you know, I had the parent come to me and say, why are you telling my son that he can take the college class? And I said, you know what? Your son wants to do it, and let him take the test. If he passes the test, I'll give him an opportunity. This student took the test. He barely passed it. He passed the test, so he got into the class. He passed that class, and he also took the second semester, which is tougher, and he passed that too. And that's what I don't let anyone tell my students that they can, to limit themselves. I always tell them that they can do, and I always tell all my classes, you need to go to college. And I repeat that, and I want them to take those classes. And that's one of the passions that I have, that I tell my students always, that I don't limit anybody. And that was my best example that I have for teaching.
I teach 9th and 12th grade English, and so that's writing, composition, and literature. And so my students at the end of the semester, if they can tell me they've read a certain amount of books, or if they understand sentence structure and things like that, those are the things that I feel that our tests indicate whether they've made growth or if they are successful. But really for me, what I look for when I look for success in my students is that my students have become better thinkers, that they can engage with their own learning, that they take charge of their own learning, that it's not my responsibility for them to be learners, but that they have accepted that it's their responsibility to be a learner and a lifelong learner, not just a learner for my English classroom. It is my hope that my students will perform well in their math classes and in their social studies classes and in their elective classes as a result of being in my class. I want them to be effective communicators. And so those are the things that I really look for. And when I see, when they come back and they talk about things like that, or the ability that they have to just communicate with other people because of something that they've learned in English, that's what I see as the success for me personally as a teacher, but then also for them. So I think that one of the ways that we do that is that I've heard my colleagues say things like this, is that we don't lower any standard, and that we hold them to high accountability. In our district, every student at the junior level takes the ACT, and we prepare them for that. That's not something I'm just preparing them to do in the English classroom, but that's something that all teachers are preparing with this idea of critical thinking. And so there's things like that, rigor, all of those buzzwords that people are using in academia. But I just really think that it's our charge for us to prepare these kids to think on their own and to embrace their own ability to become a thinker and then use that in the future.
Thank you, Selena. Silvia.
Many states out there will measure teacher success based on student achievement. And to me, that is not true success. True success is when the student blossoms and grows and becomes a critical thinker and is able to problem solve and is able to come back to me years after my starting to teach them and tell me, Mrs. McDonald, because of you, I am in honors classes. Because of you, I am going to go to college. You taught me everything I know in English and the desire to learn. The fact that I can impact a child to want to learn and to want to become a productive citizen in our communities and feel valued, that is my success.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I'm getting the signals, but I'm going to ignore them for a second. I'm going to challenge each of you, one sentence, okay? Really, one sentence.
No way.
Maybe a few clauses in there, but one sentence. Because we have in the room with us the person who talks probably most frequently directly to the president about education policy. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, guys. What would you have Roberto Rodriguez say to President Obama, the one sentence that, that could help you to better support the work of teachers like yourself in this nation?
I'll start.
You go.
Yes, I can't answer that question without first pointing out what are the challenges that we face as educators, and particularly with ELLs, and what can the administration do then to support the education of English language learners. Absolutely, one of the things that inflames me right now the most is how we are debilitating our English language learners by having them only learn to answer multiple choice assessments. In doing so, we are training children to find sentences and answers that are already created for them, not allowing them, not pushing them to think and articulate a logical answer. Again, and then so in schools that are suffering, not meeting AYP, schools that are facing reconstitution, they are then having to focus on an assessment that is by nature debilitating English language learners from. Okay.
Thank you. Sylvia.
I would love to talk to him myself, because as a dual language, two-way immersion teacher, it's a viable opportunity where students are expected to do more. That we value the language that every child brings, and I would hope that that opportunity would be strengthened across the nation. I read in the NEA Bell morning email that I get that only 15% of our students learn a second language and use it, as opposed to 45% of European students. And that was reported in Forbes magazine. So we need to look into that. And California is really trying hard to do that, and now we even have established the California Seal of Biliteracy.
Thank you.
And I would love that.
I still set out the challenge of one sentence.
I know, I'm sorry.
I think support programs like the one we have for students in early junior high to take ACT tests, and especially Latino students, if they do that, take the ACT and take classes early, their success, I think, is they have better chances of going through college. And I've seen it in our community. It's only 20,000 people there, but during the summers, we send about 100 students to different universities through the citywide program, or Johns Hopkins program, and this can be done all throughout the United States for Hispanics. If we follow that, I think if they also go through that program, there's going to be more success. I think support the programs.
Thank you, Jesus.
One sentence. Okay, here I go. Okay, right here. There we go. Two things, one sentence, but two things. The first is that I am your ally. I am on the front lines in the classroom. So I need you to listen to me. That's one. Okay. Second is keep supporting my students, my dreamers. They are the hope, and they're why we're here, and it's why I'm sitting here. And so keep supporting the dreamers.
Thank you.
I think it's valuable that we need to support the students so they're not thinking about the everyday worries of their families. They need to be able to go to school, get an education, and not worry about where's the next meal coming from, how are we going to pay for housing, am I going to be able to stay in the United States? I think it's valuable for the students that we have today that we invest in them and we invest in their teachers to help them grow. They are our leaders. They are going to be really great contributors to our community. And we need to take away some of those everyday worries that they have so they can be available to learn.
Yeah.
And I just have to say that if Dan Cardinelli has anything to do with it, there will be a panel on this very topic, Sylvia. Thank you. Okay, I think we have John Carson with us now, whom I would like to introduce with just a few words. And then we're drawing a close to this panel. And so I just deeply appreciate all the wisdom that has been shared up here. We can stay here until John finishes his comments. John is the director of the Office of Public Engagement. He previously served as the chief of staff at the White House Council on Environmental Quality. And before joining the administration, John was the national field director for President Barack Obama's campaign in 2008 and worked on the transition team. John served in the Peace Corps in southern Honduras for 2 years, so we know he understands us when we switch to Spanish. At that time, he was building water systems for rural villages. He graduated from the University of Wisconsin at Platteville with a BS in Civil and Environmental Engineering, just like a couple of our panelists today. And he received his master's degree in geography from a really outstanding university, UCLA.
Well, thank you, Patricia. And Roberto, did you get all that? Excellent. Well, this has just been an amazing Champions of Change that we've got here today, but I have to say I'm here to close out today with an ask for each and every one of you, an ask for our audience, for everyone following online, and especially our champions. And that's to tell the story of what you saw here today. To not let these stories of our incredible champions end here today, but to help us spread the word. You know, we have a number of these Champions of Change events. We've had some great ones. We've had folks who came back from Iraq and Afghanistan and are now helping other veterans in their communities. We've had chefs who've partnered with local school districts on Let's Move. But I have to tell you, and I've been following along online myself today, this is a really special group of people who are not just making a difference in their community, but by setting our young people out on the right course, just exponentially making change happen across the country. So my challenge to you all is share this story. Tweet about it. We're using the hashtag WHChamps. If you don't know what a hashtag is, just ask one of your students. Blog about it, write about it, grab 3 people at church on Sunday and tell them these stories. And tell your own story. Those of you here in the audience today, you're connected to making our young people start out and challenge them. And I ask you to do this for 2 different reasons. First, I'm willing to bet that even our champions today are walking out of here with an idea, a technique, a program they hadn't heard about before, and we need to help share that information. Help share the work that you're doing if you're following online or here in the audience. Let's help spread this word. But the second reason that I ask you to share these stories is because, you know, the reason we started the Champions of Change program was to show that while we're here in Washington, D.C., arguing over budgets, arguing over policies, there are Americans across this country making a difference in their communities. And I think no matter how we fall on the partisan lines of these different budget issues here in D.C., we can all agree we need more Americans like our champions, believing that they can make a difference in their community. So tell their stories, tell your own stories, because there'll be a young person watching online today, reading that Facebook post you do, or maybe listening when you talk about it on Sunday, who will believe that they can make a difference in their community as well. And that's the real purpose of what we're trying to do here today. So thanks again to our fantastic champions. A big, big thanks to the President's Commission on Educational Excellence for Hispanics for helping us pull this together today. Let's send our champions off with a great round of applause.